This is an update on Chris Watts. It's August 3rd, 2020. So, in 10 days, it will be the 2 year anniversary of the murders. And he's pretty much been in prison ever since. Well, he's 35 now, 35 years old. And I'd imagine he seems moderately healthy. So, you're looking at a good 40 more years, maybe probably more, of hanging out in prison and whatnot. So it's pretty bleak for him. But why I'm doing this, Chris Watts is a case I come back to all the time because I feel like I just have so many unanswered questions. But, well, they've been answered. Actually, most of my questions have been answered. I just don't believe what Chris says 100%. I think that, in a general sense, he's truthful to a certain degree, but he changes a lot of details to make him feel better, to make him look better. Probably both, but I don't think that we'll ever know the entire truth. Well, maybe we do right now, but I'll probably never accept what Chris says is 100% fact. It's just hard for me to do in general. Um, and it's especially hard for me to believe what Chris Watts says any of the time after he murdered his entire family. But moving on from that, back to Chris Watts, what he's up to today. Uh, he's incarcerated in Wisconsin at the Dodge Correctional Institute. I'm not sure where that is in Wisconsin, but he was moved there from a Colorado prison, I think for his own safety because of threats. I remember him saying in the interview in 2019, of March 2019, that he was being told to kill himself and was given directions on the best way to kill himself. But I don't know if uh, there were any direct threats towards Chris. But either way, he was moved to Wisconsin, likely for his own safety. And I don't know how long he'll be in Wisconsin. I'd imagine that he'll be moved eventually, maybe back to Colorado, or maybe if they're really nice, he'll get to be in prison in North Carolina, which is where his family lives. Doubt they're going to Wisconsin all the time to see Chris. I'm sure he gets to call them, but I doubt he gets to see them very often, if at all. So that's it's upsetting for him. But he's been there since December 5th, 2018, in Wisconsin. That's when he was moved. So maybe his parents and his sister went up there like once or twice, maybe, Christmas or something. But I doubt it, and I doubt he'll be there forever, so it won't be like that forever. And outside of that, nothing really crazy has happened to Chris Watts while he's been in prison. I mean, uh, he was moved to Wisconsin for his own safety, so they're not going to let him into Gin Pop when he gets to Wisconsin. I've read that he's in solitary confinement for his own safety, not because of anything he did that was wrong in prison. I don't really see him posing any threat to anyone in prison necessarily. So he's in solitary for his own protection, but it sucks either way. Terrible. The negative effects of solitary confinement are pretty well noted, pretty well documented, and Chris doesn't seem like the most. He doesn't feel. I don't feel like he has the most mental fortitude when it comes to dealing with something like that. Uh, but I don't know, and I'm not actually sure he's in solitary confinement anymore. But I am guessing he is, since I don't think that people were just going to get over the fact he killed his two young daughters and wife. So I'd imagine he's still in there. And in solitary confinement, his life is probably 23 hours a day in a cell, and then an hour to walk around a rec yard, probably caged in, and it would be just him. And then I don't know if they have showers in their cells or they have to be escorted to the showers. I don't know anything about this prison, and I didn't look anything up because I don't want to know. But other than that, a couple of little notable things have been said about Chris. A couple interesting things have happened. Nothing too crazy again, because it's prison, and it's really indicative of life in prison. Most of the time, nothing happens. It's not like TV or even like a documentary. Showing it like there's action 24/7. I mean, how long does a prison fight really take? A couple minutes, tops. Even if there's like 10 of them a day, you're still going to get 23 hours of mind-numbing boringness, boredom. It's dull. So, these are really the highlights from what's happened to Chris in the past year or so. One, I saw that he and Jake Patterson had become friends. They met in prison. He was the guy who kidnapped Jamie Kloss, little girl, and he also murdered her parents. But he has been transferred out of that prison, I believe, to a prison in New Mexico, or maybe it was Nevada, one of those two states. But he's not there anymore, so that friendship's probably over. I don't know how Chris felt about that. I'd be interested to know. I feel like potentially he was pretty upset. I feel like he doesn't have a lot of people to talk to in prison, and his friend was moved many thousands of miles away, and I don't think that they can call each other or anything like that. But he was friends with that guy for a little bit, so that was pretty interesting, I guess. And then there's some other things that were brought up in the interview, and I'm sure continue to now. He said that where it was reported that he had become religious in prison. I'm assuming Christianity. The legitimacy of his faith, though, is questionable. I mean, some people, it's a good act to make yourself look better, but it is true a lot of people do find God in prison and are legitimately faithful and practice their religion. Chris, I don't know. It could go either way. But he's in prison for life either way, so it really doesn't matter to me. And, it's a good coping method, too. So, if it helps him deal with his time in prison, it's probably a good idea. But in the end, I don't know if it's real or not. Don't really care. But that was one of the things that is noted pretty often about Chris since he's gotten to prison. Probably one of the stranger things. I think he talked about this in the interview. He keeps pictures of his kids, which that's not the strange part, but he talks to them every day apparently, and he reads to them. So that's pretty odd. I wonder if he has a picture of Shanann too. I don't know. I doubt it. He's probably got a picture of Nicole Kessinger though, or whatever her name is now, because she's in witness protection. And back to that interview in 2019, he looked pretty happy. Well, you couldn't see him, but he sounded pretty happy. He sounded really ecstatic for being sentenced to life in prison and to be serving that sentence. Maybe he was just happy to talk to someone, or that they wanted to talk to him. That could have been it, definitely. But he seemed happier than just that. He seemed like he was pretty content being in prison, and he didn't really mind it. And he had said that he liked this prison a lot more. So I, for a while, was just going on the belief that he was moderately happy, not really too affected by all of what's going on with this sentence. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't be, but since then I've seen articles, and apparently a source that wasn't named said that he has no hope left for his future. He's really depressed. Apparently it was pretty bad on his birthday this year. His birthday's in May. He turned 35 this year, which I completely believe that he's depressed. I don't see why this person would lie, and I mean, it's completely feasible. I would definitely understand. It's completely understandable, especially around his birthday. Holidays are pretty bad too, probably. But his birthday, I imagine, wakes up. It's like, I'm 35 today. Probably have to do this 40, 50 more times before I die, and I can finally be released in a way. So that was probably a huge trigger, and maybe it was just finally starting to sink in that his life is going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible for the rest of his life. So I don't know, but again, I don't imagine him having the greatest amount of mental fortitude, and if this is true, and he is really depressed, I don't see him getting any better over the next couple of years. If anything, you can really see his mental health plummeting, especially if he's still in solitary confinement, which I'm assuming he is. I think he's got a long road ahead of him if he's really this upset and really this depressed. It's going to be a long time before he gets better, if ever. Again, effects of solitary confinement, well documented and well noted, and so hard to deal with. I mean, he's I'd imagine like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, he's in solitary confinement under pretty much the same conditions, but he knows he's never gonna be in general population or anything like that. I'd imagine a guy like that, Ted Kaczynski, he probably takes it all in stride, probably generally unaffected, if at all, by solitary confinement, but I really see Chris as the polar opposite of that. I feel like he would probably definitely snap over time. And, it's hard to say how he's going to handle it going forward. It does take people time to adjust to everything, and maybe he'll accept his life sentence and really adjust life in prison and find something to give his life meaning. I don't know. I don't really hope for anything either way. I mean, I'm going to tune in and find out what he's doing, how he feels, but what happens to him, I really don't care. And it just doesn't look good going forward for him, though. Eventually, his parents are going to die. The letters that he gets probably won't come in as often. I'm sure he'll still get them. And those two things probably do help keep him sane. The letters and talking to his family. But really all we can do is wait, and hopefully someone will still continue to give us information about him. But, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we won't hear anything about Chris Watts ever again. That's doubtful, but I will stay updated. And mainly because I just feel like I have unanswered questions about just everything that happened. I mean, generally I feel like I have a decent idea. Everyone has a alright idea of exactly what happened, but just never really know if Chris is telling the truth. At least I won't ever fully believe him. And I've kind of half accepted that I'm just never going to be able to believe him fully, but it is frustrating for me. Definitely, in particular, I mean, there's cases that I just 100% feel like I know what happened. Like Russell Williams, I really feel like that guy really cracked, spilled everything he had. That's a case that I'm pretty happy with my knowledge about, and I haven't watched that ages. It's a great case, and if you haven't seen it, you should definitely look it up, but I don't really watch anything, and I don't look out for anything he does. He can probably handle prison better than Chris, though. He's probably doing okay. But, that's Chris in 2020. He's just living his life in prison, serving his sentence, and really not much he can do. I mean, he manages to stay in the news every now and then, just because people are still interested. I mean, they're really grasping at straws with some of these articles, though, to put Chris back in the news somehow because they know people still care. But there's just not much he's doing now on a day-to-day basis, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think going forward you'll see a couple articles a year about him. Maybe he'll do another interview, but life's probably going to stay pretty much the same for Chris Watts. Nothing's going to change. It's going to be pretty much the same day every day for the next how many ever years he's in solitary confinement. So that's Chris Watts 2020. I don't know what you want to happen to Chris, but if you want him to be punished harshly, I think you got what you wish for, because solitary confinement and life in prison are pretty terrible, and honestly, arguably, they're worse than the death penalty for some people. I don't know how much Chris, wants to live, or maybe is potentially afraid of dying, or he would have really wanted to die. I'm not sure, but obviously the family didn't want him to get the death penalty, so he got life in prison, which is a pretty harsh punishment too. So that's kind of where I'm at in the Chris Watts case. I don't expect too much more from it.